Hi, my name is Dominic Ruppert, and welcome to my TED Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the diversity that we see in agriculture, high school, and middle school classrooms. I'm a senior in agriculture education here at K-State. My first 2 years of post-secondary education was done at Lincoln Land Community College, where I got my associate's degree as a bachelor's of science with a focus on agriculture. I've grown up participating in agriculture my whole life. I've been fortunate enough to travel across the country and talk to a lot of neat people and see a lot of different operations. And just within one breed of cattle, the Limousin breed, the amount of diversity I've seen throughout that is, it speaks volumes to the diversity that there is in agriculture. So, whenever you step into a high school classroom, you have could be anywhere from a handful of students up to 30 some students, maybe even larger than that, depending on the school you're at. So, the chances of any of those students being the same isn't likely. If you're teaching in a suburban area, you may have students in there that really have no idea what agriculture is. Or you can get in a rural community to where you mainly have students that come from an agricultural background and then maybe just one or two students that are kind of on the outskirts of things and don't really have an understanding for it. So today we're going to talk about some of those differences you'll see and kind of some of the ways to handle it. Let's start out with what I'm the most used to, and that is in a more rural community. So in a rural community, chances are that there's probably going to be maybe a third of your students who are somewhat directly involved in agriculture, but then the rest of them are maybe this is an elective they decided to take because they heard it was a good class, or they could come in your class thinking it's just an easy blow-off class. I mean, as an elective teacher, that's kind of some of the challenges we face. Having students come in there that don't really have an interest in agriculture, but it was just a class they thought it would be easy to take. So when you're working with those students, say you have a farm kid in there just comes from row crops, and then you have a kid in there who comes from animal production. Now the diversity between those students, there's still a gap that needs to have a bridge built over it, because mainly they may think that what the other person doesn't seem practical or useful. So being able to monitor those conversations between students is extremely important. Now, I am a big person on discussion. I really like the students to be speaking, kind of seeing what their interests are, and trying to be able to build upon those interests. So being able to, help students be able to have those, I don't want to really call it adult conversations because adults don't seem to be always the best of this either, but being able to have a civil conversation between the two to see eye to eye, whether they agree or not, just at least understanding why they're doing what they're doing. Now, this probably isn't going to be the hardest thing to do. What's going to be hard to do at that small rural community is the one student in there who has no idea what agriculture is. They may be a vegetarian. They may be non-GMO. So what can you do? And how do you keep other students from kind of attacking that student? That is a very, very important thing to be able to do. Now, whenever you're giving students this ability to have those conversations between each other, that is so important to what they take on outside of the classroom. Having to be able to have those conversations on a larger platform to where that person, as a consumer, where you kind of affect what they're doing, that is extremely important to the industry. Now, obviously, I'm pro agriculture and a meat eater myself, but being able to understand a student who comes from the vegetarian or vegan beliefs or something like that, but still be able to show in a way why we do what they do. Now, that student doesn't have to agree with what you're doing. You just have to show that student what you're doing and hopefully give them a bit of respect for what you're doing to where you can agree, or you can kind of find a middle ground on, so hey, we're going to do this but you don't have to believe in it. We're just telling you the facts behind it. And that's the biggest problem we face today, and especially in agriculture, is people who don't have the facts. And there's so much false news that gets spread around, especially on social media, that people may become a vegetarian just because of a Facebook article they seen that was far from the truth. Now, having those conversations in a way where, well, you're not doing the right thing by not eating meat. No, it's, hey, this is what you might have heard. This is what we're actually doing. So, the most important part of this is being able to level with someone and not infringe on what they believe just because you believe something different. As an educator, your job is to spread the truth and nothing but the truth, and make sure that the conversations that are had by your students is beneficial to both parties. Now let's go to the flip side of the coin. Say you're teaching in an urban area where the students know next to nothing about agriculture. So how do you handle that? Well, you got to break it down and understand that something that may seem like common knowledge to you isn't common knowledge to them. Whenever you go to start your lessons, you need to be understanding of their knowledge or lack thereof, which is fine. That's okay that they come from a different walk of life. But you just have to be patient and work with those students and start from the basics. It's okay to learn the basics. I mean, in math class, you don't start with calculus. You start with simple addition and work your way up. So that will be beneficial from that standpoint. And dive into those students' interests. Say they like eating corn. Say that's their favorite food. So show them where it comes from. Consumers today are extremely far removed from the farm. So being able to show them where their food comes from and why it is made the way it is, that's going to do wonders in helping out our current situation in fighting world hunger. Now, I'm not going to take a stance here on what is proper and improper farming practices, but people may want to chase a trend of, say, something that's not near as productive just because they were said that the more productive practice is done by farmers just to be greedy and get an extra buck. Well, I can guarantee you what we're doing and using those extra fancy things is not gaining us a buck. The way the markets are today, it's hard to break even. So, people don't get this. People don't understand that farmers get less than 50 cents of every dollar that is made in agriculture. I think it's about around a quarter. Quarter on the dollar. Think about that. So where's the rest of the money go? Well, the money goes to the people who get that final product that are marketing it the way they are. So you have to tell them the truth behind things. That's really the neat part. If you're in a classroom that with students who don't have that deeper understanding of agriculture, is being able to have those just come to Jesus meetings that, hey, farmers aren't trying to kill you and we're not cutting corners just to make the extra buck. Because the most important takeaway of it all is farmers use the products that we're raising. That is the biggest thing. And I think if we can relay that message more, it's so much easier to make those conversations. So to kind of a wrap up of this all is just being level-headed and making sure that your students who think they know more or think they know the right or wrong way are level-headed as they're having those conversations as well. Thank you all for listening.